Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, WiLS, for inviting me for 15 minutes here on Taco Tuesday. Today, we're going to be talking about critical thinking in a little demonstration I'm calling Infobase Quick Hits. We're going to talk about 3 resources, doing about 3 minutes on each, to give you a little tour of what we have to offer public libraries, academics, and K-12s dealing with this very important issue of critical thinking. I got the idea for this presentation after a conversation with my 8-year-old niece, where she said quite definitively, kind of out of the blue, that dogs' mouths are cleaner than humans' mouths. And I found that to be, she was just so confident about it that I asked her where she heard that, thinking that maybe she heard it on a science show or learned it in school. And she said she heard it from Thomas. Thomas is my 11-year-old nephew. And I can say pretty definitively that he is not a reputable source. So this is a very interesting idea, but it's something that I recognize in myself. I recognize it in my friends and family all over the world. We get very comfortable with our own sources that we go to for information. But it's important to not only teach 18-year-olds entering colleges and universities, but 8-year-olds who are relying on their 11-year-old cousins for information, and 80-year-olds who are making up decisions about their own healthcare, to make sure that we're constantly building critical thinking skills. Infobase has 3 resources. Actually, we've got a number of resources that will focus on critical thinking skills, but for today's demonstration, I'm going to be talking about 3 of them. The first, Credo reference; second, issues and controversies; and third, polling the nations. Credo reference, I'm beginning with, I'm happy to say that we were named by Library Journal as the must-have reference resource, general reference resource for public libraries and academic institutions in 2020. So we were called the gold standard. We're quite happy about that. I'm going to be telling the story about using Credo reference to build critical thinking skills, as this is a place where you're going to come first to find citable background information from multiple sources. And the key of, a key tool in teaching critical thinking is having access to multiple sources and understanding where those sources come from, and kind of making up your own mind and using fact-based information from these sources to determine what you're going to make up your, cause you to make your decisions. I'm going to move on to issues and controversies, which is a resource that really stares critical thinking in the face. It takes popular hot button topics of today, things that are in the news all the time, and writes a very sober, non-biased, non-partisan article that offers multiple viewpoints. And this is the goal. We'd love to have respectful discourse again. And this is a resource where you can really learn to have respectful discourse, to understand that people who disagree with you probably have reasons why they disagree with you. They might not be shouted from the airwaves, but this is why databases and libraries in general can be so useful, to help you understand that you can have respectful debate and you can change your mind. The third thing I'm going to focus on today is polling the nations. And this is great once you start with the foundational information about, defining whatever it is you're going to define. And today I'll use the idea of vaccinations all through these 3 databases. In Credo reference, you're going to get your information about vaccinations from reference. Then we're going to look at articles from Issues and Controversies that looks at different arguments around vaccinations from multiple points of view. And then we're going to look at Polling the Nations, which is a resource that offers over 700,000 original poll questions from over 18,000 surveys conducted from 1986 to the present from all over the world. And these are fascinating because you're able to look at polls throughout time, how trends change, how viewpoints change. It's a little sleeper resource that I think talk about enough, Polling the Nations, but it's a lot of fun to use as well. And we'll take a look at that. So let's dive in quickly and take a quick look at Credo reference to start. All right, I paused my screen. I'm resuming now. So you should all see the Credo reference platform. Why do I start with Credo reference? Because this is a place to get background information. We are reference only, encyclopedias, dictionaries, atlases. When teaching critical thinking, it's important to talk about checking multiple sources. You might say, well, Credo reference is one source, but it isn't. It's a bookshelf of over 1,000 sources from over 100 publishers of academic reference. You can scroll our bookcase, you can scroll our subject dropdown, you can scroll our publisher dropdown. You'll find fact-based background information on any topic, all of our content thoroughly vetted by editors of those publishing houses. We have content in hopefully every area of study that might be interesting. It's a place you can come instead of Wikipedia, where there might be some opinion and practical jokers slipping in articles all the time. You can come here and be confident that you're starting with solid citable background information. So as I mentioned, we'll use vaccination because it's just so in the news right now. So I'll choose vaccination as my search. And if I'm a beginning researcher in high school or college or community college, I do a search on vaccination and I scroll down, and from Credo reference, what I'm going to get is a survey of reference information about vaccines. Since we're getting content from over 100 publishers and we have content in over 80 subject areas, you'll be looking through multiple lenses. So we have inoculation and vaccination from the American Enlightenment Encyclopedia. A dictionary of microbiology, molecular biology will just give you solid, citable, scientific definitions. We have an encyclopedia of culture wars. Vaccine arguments didn't start in 2021. We've been having them since the beginning of America, back with the smallpox vaccine. Religious law in America. So you're going to be getting all kinds of different points of view, testing your assumptions. All of this is fact-based. All of it includes full citations. And we have a little steering wheel of a mind map that will allow you to kind of open up new avenues of research, see terms that maybe are brand new to you, and continue exploring on that theme. So that's Credo reference. Now we have the background information that we need to confidently step forward and start building our arguments, right? Start building our debates and our paper topics. Issues and controversies is that little meaty tool where you're going to find, again, hot button issues being discussed all the time, broken down in a very sober academic way, so we can actually have conversations instead of yelling matches. So we have hundreds of articles over the years that offer multiple points of view on these topics. So I'll click on mandatory vaccinations, something that was written in April 2021 of this year. And you'll note as you scroll down, we have little synopses of different points of view on mandatory vaccinations. And you can skip down to get into the meatier content as well. Thorough background information written by our publishers, our editors, stripped of partisan language and bias meticulously. Then you'll get a robust article on supporters' arguments for mandatory vaccination, and then opponents. We'll also aggregate information related to the term or the topics. We have primary source material, court cases, multimedia, editorials from different newspapers, and news articles in general. If you're working with students who are exhausted of the current media cycle, but you still want them to exercise their critical thinking skills, you can choose topics from years ago. And I'll choose something that isn't quite so politically charged. I'll say, celebrity gossip, for example. This is a greater topic, and you can see all the different articles that we have written throughout the years, which will offer opposing viewpoints. So we really run the gamut in the topics that we cover, but these are great starting points for really talking about debate in a respectful way. The third resource I want to talk about is one of my favorites, over 700,000 original poll questions, and from really reputable sources. So we have this big search box. You can search anywhere you want, but I'm going to click these 3 lines here, and this is what I'll focus on in my 3 minutes, my 3 remaining minutes. You can find polls by topics, by locations, or by sources. Speaking to librarians, I know sources are important. So I want to make sure that you guys know who's giving us these polls, where we're pulling from. Big news, mainstream media, as well as more serious polls, Quinnipiac, Pew Research Center. We have, I think, hundreds or thousands of polling sources, anything from like the National Science Foundation to AARP to Newsday to Newsweek. We also have the National Pasta Association. So it's all kinds of polls, which is great for teaching what polling is. What types of polls would the National Pasta Association, put out there? And why might they do that? So you can start having conversations about what polling is and is there bias in polling and looking at the source of the polls. I'm not going to stick on National Pasta Association. Let me go back to topics. And I'm going to go again to our favorite topic, vaccination. And click on that. And then we'll get polls from July 2021 from Siena College Research Institute, for example. And I can use this little toggle to back when we weren't constantly talking about vaccines, just like 3 years ago. We'll get a whole different set of polls that have nothing to do with the word mandatory or nothing to do with our own personal health at the moment. So you can kind of go back in time and look at different polls throughout history. This is from November 2018. Which of these terms refers to health benefits occurring when most people in a population get a vaccine? This is from the Pew Research Center. So you can view by topic. And then lastly, this was kind of fun. You can go by location. So I did Connecticut this morning. I should probably do Wisconsin, but this was I actually learned something, and it was I had a very critical thinking moment. I clicked on Connecticut and I said, I don't want any election stuff. So I'm going to go back. I grew up in Connecticut. Go back to when I was growing up. And I clicked to 1986 to 2001. And I just clicked on the first poll. And I remember being super surprised by this poll. Who do you most admire? And who's your second choice? And George Bush beat the Pope by a huge number. And so my immediate thought was, who put this poll out? Was it like the Bush family? You know what I mean? Was it? And then I look at who put it out. It was Gallup. And then I look at the date. So history and context is important. This is a couple months after September 11th, when the president was extremely popular all around the country. But this is just one poll that I stumbled on in all these 700,000 polls. And I had a little lesson about how important it is to put polls in context. And I don't mean to make any political statement. It's just very rare to see a poll where someone is so much more popular than the Pope in that way that I was just like, who did this? But it's a lot of fun to use. This is Polling the Nations. I could spend all day on here, and you guys could too. I've hit my 15-minute mark. I want to thank Jeff and the Taco Tuesday people for giving me the time. I'm going to stop sharing at this point. Thanks all.
Thank you, Lisa. That is fascinating. I'm always thrilled to see some of the cool things that can be done with resources, things that I never would have considered checking out. So thanks so much for sharing that with us today.